respects to elders past, present and emerging. The meeting today is to consider the determination of 3 development applications. Panel members for these matters are myself, Lindsay Fletcher, as the independent chair, Jan Morell, and as the expert members, and the community member, Michelle Fletcher. This meeting is being held by public video conference due to COVID-19 precautions. As the panel chair, I request that you be considerate and respectful of each other and remain on mute until I ask you to speak. I also request that you don't interject whilst another person is speaking, otherwise I'll request that you no longer be part of the meeting. The panel operates in terms of a code of conduct and operating guidelines, which have been modified to facilitate the effective function of the panel during the COVID period. Temporary changes are available on the council website. The public meeting will be recorded and a copy will be placed on the council's website following the meeting. If that is of concern to you on privacy grounds, then I suggest you take it into consideration in your decision to make a public statement before the panel today. In terms of the code, general declarations of interest have been provided before the meeting by all panel members, as well as a specific declaration of interest in relation to the matters being considered today. I can confirm that all declarations of interest have been received. No members of the panel have declared a conflict of interest on any item for determination at this meeting or at our electronic meeting later today. The signed declarations will be available to view through Council's website tomorrow afternoon. I also wish to advise that all members of the public addressing the panel today must declare, prior to commencing their address, any political contributions or donations exceeding $1,000 made over the past 2 years to any political party or candidate contested the last ordinary election of the council. Our usual practice is to allow each speaker 3 minutes to present, including speakers representing community groups, individuals or the applicant. If you've registered to speak, your address to the panel will be recorded. You'll be given a warning signal, warning sound, about 30 seconds before your time limit, and I do have a limited discretion to allow extra time if appropriate. Our normal practice is to hear first from councillors, but we don't have any councillors registered to speak today, followed by members of the public, and then from the applicant in each matter. The panel has been provided with a copy of all of the submissions received in response to the public exhibition of the applications. Therefore, there is no need for speakers to repeat the points made in those submissions. The panel's also had the opportunity to inspect each of the sites that are before us today. I ask that each speaker be heard in silence while they are addressing the panel and that courtesy and respect be observed throughout this meeting. There's to be no personal criticism directed at any speaker or the council staff. Such criticism will be contrary to our code of conduct and won't be accepted. Panel members may ask questions of the speakers to clarify our understanding of the points they are making. After hearing from all speakers, the panel will adjourn to debate the matters and to make its determinations. If more information is required by the panel, the decisions may be deferred, either for a further public meeting or to be dealt with electronically. Panel decisions and recording will be made available on the council website as soon as possible, usually the following day. There is to be no recording of this meeting other than the official recording. As I said, we have 3 development applications in this public meeting component. The first of those is for 3 and 4 Lamfoist Street in Randwick, DA 526 of 2022. The assessment report recommends that the panel refuse the application and notes that the matter is already the subject of appeal to the New South Wales Land and Environment Court. There's actually no people registered to address the panel on this item, so we can actually move straight forward to the second item. That second item is 11 Mundara Street in Clovelly, development application 123 of 2022. The assessment report again recommends that the panel refuse the application. We have only one person registered to address the panel on this item, and no one registered on behalf of the applicant. Again, could I ask that before speaking, you say your name for the benefit of the recording and indicate whether or not you've made any relevant political donations. So I invite, forgive me if I don't get the pronunciation correctly, Ms. Adnil Ramos. Adnil, are you there?
Can you hear me?
You can.
Hi.
Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to DA 123/2022. I just want to state that as a resident, I do support the decision of the council not to approve the DA as it stands. Also bearing in mind, can you hear me? Sorry about that. Bearing in mind that 10 local residents did take the time and thought to pen letters in objection, and our regulations exist to ensure that the amenity of the street, surroundings, and community are maintained. So I live next door to this property, and I'll just briefly mention points of concern with regard to that. But before that, I will also just mention that if there is a lack of attendance by locals, it's possibly due to the sort of awkward time of day and time in the middle of the school week and school holidays, rather than a lack of local concern or engagement on this issue. So with regard to our own concerns, we have three main ones. The first is the loss of view of the open sky and direct light to 2 rooms of our home. One being a reading room and music practice room, as well as my younger son's bedroom. This would result obviously in colder, darker rooms in our semi-detached home, when we presently are able to enjoy the benefits of sunlight and some convective heat during the winter in particular. Another concern is the proposed pool, which will be located above ground level on level 1, directly alongside our fence. From this, we would anticipate a lot of noise and splashing at very close range. Finally, there would be a loss of privacy to my older son's bedroom, as his window would be clearly visible from the rooftop terrace proposed. As several of my neighbors are away or busy at this time, I am passing on some of their concerns, which they related to me directly. So these are, number 1, multiple points of non-compliance with the local environmental and residential planning regulations. Number 2, the sheer scale and size of the overall structure, which will negatively affect the laid-back atmosphere of this area. Number 3, privacy concerns for various neighbors caused by the rooftop terrace. There's also great concern from neighbors on both Battery and Mandara Street that I've spoken with, that the position of the proposed driveway on Mandara will eventually compromise the health and vigor of the one very mature Banksia tree. It's the only significant tree on this street. So I'm almost done, but the one thing I'd like to mention is that this corner tends to be heavily utilized by pedestrians year-round, particularly in the summer, because of its convenience to multiple popular beaches, pubs, cafes, primary schools, not to mention well-used bus routes and the cliff walk. Pedestrians range from commuters, kids, prams, pets, tourists, seniors, citizens, etc. Approving a construction of this proposed scale with entertainment terraces hovering above the ground level would have a profoundly negative effect on the relaxed, human-centered feel and sense of safe walkability that we now are so lucky to enjoy. So as stewards of this beautiful district and as proponents for livability, diversity, and environmental health, I commend Randwick City Council for adhering to our local planning regulations and recommending refusal of DA 123/2022. I do request that you notify affected residents should amended plans or exception to the development standards form according to clause 4.6 be lodged. And that is all.
Thank you. Can I ask you again, if you wouldn't mind, just to confirm whether or not you made any political donations.
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, just I need you to confirm for the record that whether you did or didn't make any political donations to candidates at the last council election that exceed $1,000.
I did not.
Thank you. Panel members, so thank you for your address, but panel members, any questions of Ms. Ramos?
If I could just clarify, you are the semi-detached dwelling in Battery Street next door to the subject property?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions?
Not from me.
Not from me. Okay. So thank you. We understand the points you're making. The council has a policy in terms of notification of any amended plans or further notification. So you can, that's a public document you can have a look at, but I'm sure you would be notified in the event there was a further application.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes that item. We will adjourn to discuss it later, and as I said earlier, our determination will be published on the council's website.
Okay.
So, the panel will now move on to the third item on our public agenda, which is for 59 Beach Street, Coogee. It's a modification application for DA 637 of 2019. The assessment report recommends the panel conditionally approve some aspects of this modification application. We have two people registered to address the panel on the item, and again, before you address the panel, I'd ask you to confirm whether or not you've made any political donations. The first speaker we have is a neighbouring property. Really annoying. A neighbouring property, Mr. Stuart Murray. Mr. Murray, are you there?
You might need something.
Yeah. Mr. Murray, are you there? You may need to unmute yourself on your computer if you're there, please.
Do we have the ability to visually see them as well, Angela?
They have to turn on their cameras for that to happen.
Yeah, okay, so.
And Mr. Murray, can you, if you're there, can you turn on your camera and also unmute yourself? We seem to be having difficulties. I wonder, in the interest of time, whether we move on and hear from the applicant first, and if Mr. Murray is there at the end of that time.
Oh.
So it was there.
Needs to rejoin.
Technical problems.
Yeah, thank
The
you.
old turn off.
We might just give Mr. Murray a moment to see if it comes back on. Just for the record, the panel did have the opportunity to inspect both the subject site with the applicant and the neighbour's property, Mr. Murray's property, with himself and his wife earlier today, and so we're familiar with the issues they have raised. There's somebody waiting in the lobby. Hopefully that's Mr. Murray. So, Mr. Murray, we've heard you've just rejoined. Can you, and you hopefully are unmuted, so if you're there,
yes.
you proceed?
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Okay, apologies for that. My name is Stuart Murray, and I've made no political donations.
Thank you for that. So as I mentioned in your absence, we have had the benefit of inspecting your property, hearing or you showing us the concerns you had this morning, but please proceed.
All right. Thank you very much. And thanks to the panel and the council members for taking the time to visit our site this morning. It is much appreciated by my wife and myself. We do find it incredible that we are back here again 4 years after the original DA was approved. The applicant has come back a few more times, and amazingly, we continue the need to fight for our own privacy. The independent panel approved the original DA that is not within LEP with several conditions, one being that there be glazed windows on the top level for privacy reasons. Now the applicant wants to have those conditions deleted. The original DA would not have been approved without these conditions attached, and this was noted by the panel this morning as well. Please understand that to approve the amendment is to take away our privacy for many years. We fail to see how this is possible. We object to all amendments on privacy grounds. For the top windows, we object to the removal of the condition for glazed windows. If the top two windows are allowed to have louvers, then the applicant will be able to see directly into our internal and external living spaces, and they can be easily altered or removed. For the tree removal, we object to the removal of the 5 trees on the northern boundary line. The existing trees are 6+ metres high, and landscape officer David Meredith mentioned the trees have no chance to survive because the original DA approved structure was too close to the boundary trees, and that during the build these tree roots were cut. Furthermore, David mentioned that it will take many years for any replacement trees to mature to the current height of the removed trees. Removal of these trees will allow unobstructed views from many vantage points for the applicant into all our living spaces, which includes my daughter's bathroom and bedroom. As well, noise pollution will be much more substantial. There are 3 balconies that have no screening, meaning noise will travel further and be much louder. The east-facing louvers. We object to the removal of the east-facing louvers. The applicant can already view directly into my daughter's bedroom and bathroom and our living room, even with the boundary trees still there. The boundary tree removal will mean complete unobstructed views into these rooms for many years if these louvers are removed. We are being told that vegetation is not taken into consideration when making planning decisions, but we strongly believe that without vegetation, based on our initiative of planting tall plants, that our privacy would have been impacted even more. We are trying to prevent it being impacted further than it already has been. What privacy conditions are in place or advised for the lower ground level, which has complete viewing access into our house and yard? This was noted by the panel this morning. When the applicant stands on the lower level, they can view straight into our living room. We would like the glazed opaque windows maintained. Why were clear windows put in which does not adhere to the conditions? What happens if the panel suggests the conditional windows be put back in? How does the applicant do this at this late stage? We question one's motives for putting in the wrong windows, hoping that panel agrees to this latest conditions. We don't feel comfortable with the condition of external louvers. That can be easily removed by him or future owners. We would like a more permanent and less flexible condition. What guarantee do we have that privacy screens will remain in place into the future? We are pleading that the panel can see things from our perspective in terms of privacy in bulk and the immediate and ongoing impact on our family and future families. We also have real concerns about the following. The applicant has displayed a history of defying almost every single condition imposed on him by council. Based on this, what makes council so confident the applicant will abide by any new conditions imposed going forward? He has repeatedly shown a disregard for council's conditions and the surrounding community, and appears to stop at nothing to get what he wants. In his words, because he can. Let's look at some of the conditions the applicant has recently defied or ignored. Starting demolition when the CC was not in place. Many early morning supply drop-offs at 6 a.m. and well outside accepted times. Intentionally installing clear windows on the top level, going against council conditions. Cutting down, trimming, removing trees against council conditions. Contractors starting work well before and outside starting times. Based on the above history, if approved, could one expect that the recommended louvers be removed or altered by the applicant shortly after attaining an occupation certificate? Or perhaps the trees not be planted or not be cared for in the proper manner? Furthermore, we'd need to have complete confidence and reassurance that council will follow up and monitor that these new conditions are being adhered to. Finally, extra conditions. While we object to all the amendments, please hear that we have new conditions that we propose that will hopefully lessen the impact. That the applicant replace the removed trees on their side with trees of similar height and breadth. 2.5 metres minimum is not enough, as trees being removed are 7 metres high. The applicant pay for plant screening on our side of the fence. This way we can be in control to ensure the trees actually have a chance to grow and mature and create privacy for us. The applicant pay for lattice screening all along the fence line, at least 1 to 2 metres high to create screening. Extension of privacy screens all the way along the northern side to the eastern edge of all balconies, floor to ceiling. This will create more privacy for us. Trees placed on all balconies to provide extra screening. Council to monitor that conditions are being followed properly. Council to check in every 3 to 6 months to ensure the applicant is adhering to conditions imposed. Finally, the last two, the applicant is not allowed to ask us to trim or cut our trees, and the applicant can't appeal on any of these newly imposed conditions and ask to have them amended further down the track like we are now. We've tried to come up with ideas and solutions that will suit us and the applicant. These are reasonable solutions aimed at restoring our privacy and a considerable compromise on our part. Thank you. I'm open to answering questions.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Any questions from panel members?
Thank you.
I only want a clarification. You're asking us to impose a condition that the applicant can't appeal against a condition that we might impose. I don't think we can impose that because of the freedoms we enjoy in our democracy. The applicant could appeal any condition we impose, but of course the court would give full consideration to whether the condition should be upheld or not.
We have to operate within the law, and there are restrictions on what we can and can't do. So the condition of that type is not within our power.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for considering and addressing that. It's disappointing from my part, obviously, because as I stated, the applicant has shown a propensity to keep coming back and back and back, which has been frustrating over the years. It's been 4 years now, and I do get concerned that if any new conditions are put in place, he is going to keep coming back. I have no right of appeal, which is what I keep getting told from the council and other parties, but the applicant can keep coming back as much as they like.
Okay.
And that's disappointing.
Yes, I understand your frustration, but I'm afraid that's the way the law works. And hopefully the conditions we impose this time, the applicant will abide by.
Okay.
I hope so. I don't share the same confidence.
So,
Mr. Murray, I've got one question.
Sure.
You mentioned that 3 balconies have no screening on them. Can you name those 3 balconies, please?
Name them. There'd be upper, middle, and lower.
On the
On
northern
the
side?
That would be on the eastern side.
at the 3 levels of the building are described as the lower floor, ground floor, and upper floor. So you're saying balconies on the eastern side, and it's the northern side of those balconies that you say.
Yes, that's right. So anywhere on those balconies where the applicant has access to view into our living space, I would like privacy screens put in place floor to ceiling along the northern side, extending not out 1 metre from the wall, but all the way out to the very edge of the balcony. I would love trees put in place on the front part of the balcony to help obscure the view. Yeah, but it would be the eastern facing balconies.
The eastern or the northern, the ones that adjoin your boundary. The balconies are on the eastern side, but then you're talking about the screen on the northern side.
Yes, yes.
Not eastern. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I wouldn't ask for screens to be put up on the eastern side
No,
of the
course.
balcony.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to clarify. Thank you.
That would be unfair. So all I'm asking is for a privacy screen to be put in place on the northern side to help prevent them looking in. And yeah,
Thank you.
I thought there was a privacy screen on one of the windows, one of the east-facing windows, which was up for mention as well, but council was up for approval. But I think Eunice Huang had recommended that that remain.
That is one of the matters that's before the panel today, yes.
Yeah. Yes, I object to that being removed.
And that's on the basis of views into
Privacy.
the windows on the side of your property that we saw this morning.
That's right. And with the trees, if they do get cut down, they will be able to have direct access and see it.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Murray. We will now hear from the applicant, Mr. Peter Ong. Mr. Ong, are you there?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Ong, are you there, Mr. Peter Ong? Do we know if he's there?
No,
Yeah, Mr. Ong, if you're there, you may need to unmute your computer or phone so that we can hear you.
is he listed to be on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we can see this. Mike,
You're there.
Hang on. Mr. Ong. Yeah. So again, we seem to have a technical issue there. Hopefully he will reconnect in a moment.
presumably he'll come back on, I suppose.
Give him a
That,
minute to
the
do so.
window that the neighbour was talking about, that was the window, I think W28, is it?
Correct.
That's correct.
The one from the living room, which looks directly east.
That's right.
Is it W28? Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. You probably need to get the elevation to get the numbers.
It should be W28. That's the east-facing window.
Yeah, I thought so.
W26 and W27 are the northern facing.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Mr. Ong.
Right.
So again, I just ask you to confirm whether or not you've made any political donations and then proceed with your address. To
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for waiting, and sorry for the difficulty getting in. I'm Peter Ong, the applicant and owner of 59 Beach Street. I confirm I've made no political contribution to the parties mentioned.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Firstly, I note that there are some factual inaccuracy in the objector's statement on the height of the trees, on the starting times, and there were broad statements made on privacy that's unsubstantiated and without any reference to standards or indeed like the common law. So I'm glad that.
Mr. Ong, sorry, we had the benefit, as you know, of an inspection this morning. So the panel's very familiar with the height of the trees on your property and the neighbour's property. So we understand what is there at the moment and their effect.
Okay.
Whether the height is accurately described probably isn't critical at this stage.
Sure. There are three issues I'd like to raise. First one is conditions 31 and 41. Which require me to plant a hedge of at least 2.5 meters with a species reaching 6 meters at maturity. First of all, I note in common law, you can potentially get into trouble with tree hedge over 2.5 meters. If these conditions are approved, I will have a 6-meter hedge along the entire length of my northern boundary, severely blocking natural sunlight to the first 2 levels, comprising my family room, office, master bedroom, and bathroom all day long. So no sunlight to the majority of my house all day long throughout the year. Planting tree hedge of that size is a serious undertaking within a narrow strip of land. Per Randwick Council own guidelines and DCP, I do not have any obligation to plant any tree for my neighbor's privacy. This is also the view held in common law in Meriton versus Sydney City Council. In addition, there's no other tree hedge of over 2.5 meters anywhere on Beach Street, let alone within 1 kilometer radius of the property. To impose condition 31 is extremely onerous. It's contrary to Randwick Council's own guidelines. It's legally dubious and it discriminates against me. I would request the panel remove conditions 31 and 41.
Can I just ask?
The second,
Can I just interrupt for one moment, Chair? I just want to ask a question while I remember. If this is the case, you had the benefit of the consent which you activated, but you weren't accepting what I will call the burden of the conditions or the requirements of the conditions. I'm just trying to understand what the circumstances are that have changed since you got the original approval, commenced the dwelling, and today.
We didn't know that the trees will be compromised when we did the foundation. The foundation was necessarily redone because we are replacing a 2-story structure with a 3-story structure. So at the advice of the structural engineer, we had to redo the foundation at great cost to me.
But one moment, but then you were also claiming that you shouldn't have the burden of the access to light, etc., for areas that were planned in the dwelling house that would have originally, or according to the conditions, had that vegetation screen.
Well, that's correct. If you've been down there today, it actually blocks the sunlight to the entire property. In fact, I've been advised by my lawyers that we can't have tree hedge over 2.5 meters.
Can I just ask you though, didn't you have an architect to advise you in terms of what the light would be in the house, in terms of the conditions, etc.?
The architect did not advise me on that aspect, and I don't see any other tree hedge over 2.5 meters anyway along in Coogee. But I go on daily walks all around the area. I've never seen a tree hedge over 2.5 meters.
Okay. All right. I'll ask you to continue with your address to us, Mr. Robb.
Yep. The second issue is window 28 is facing east, not facing north, and towards the back of the allotment as recommended by DCP. The nearest neighbor's window is 2 levels down. It's at least 30 meters away, and it's facing an acute angle of less than 30 degrees. That's the only window that's visible from that. When you look at window 28, you could hardly notice that this window as it is in the periphery. There's also plantation shutters attached to this window, and I've sent the planning officer 5x magnified photo to show that it is impossible to see into this room, even with the plantation shutters fully open. As a reasonableness test, 8 independent contractors who work at the property told me that they could not tell if anyone is standing right behind the window. For an objector to assert that his privacy is invaded is outrageous, and it just doesn't pass the PUP test. Sight of the window is completely different to being able to see into the window. I request for the removal of privacy screen for window 28, and it is completely unnecessary, and it reduces my amenity. Lastly, I would also request for the removal of the northeast tree if, in the opinion of the landscape development officer, that the tree is any way compromised, and if the probability of that tree collapse has increased, due to the storm water and sewerage pipe work. The neighbor had dug around the other side of the fence for the pool, and a huge tree collapsed, causing major damage to the fence. We did have some issue back then, but I offered to pay half for that fence. I would hate that the collapse causes any sort of danger to human life. I don't want any lawsuit coming out of this.
Thank you. Is there anything further you wish to say?
No, I think that the members have actually sort of been on site to the property, and the picture paints 1,000 words. I've heard sort of objections about viewing into the bathroom and the bedroom. I think the council's been on site. They can make up their own mind as to what they can see from these windows. I also like to point out that all the northern facing window has at least of a height of 1.8 meters. And if not, they got privacy screen up to 1.6. And all the balconies at the moment, there's the 2 balconies on the ground floor and upper ground floor, has got a vertical screening of 1.6 meter high throughout the whole length of the balcony facing north.
So the whole of the northern side of those balconies.
Correct.
Including the ground floor balcony?
No, you said the ground.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Including the ground floor balcony?
You mean the lower?
Not
ground?
including the ground floor balcony. The ground floor balcony has got a fence there of 1.8 meters high. I'm not opposed to having a lattice on top of the fence if that's funded by both parties, agreeable to both parties, and that's in accordance with the dividing fence law or act. If the council approves that.
So, Mr. Wong, you would accept a condition which requires, say, a 600, 700 millimetre lattice to be placed on top of the fence?
I've got no objections to that if it's funded by both parties.
Well, dividing fences is not a matter for this panel, but applicants often, and in the instance of where trees are being removed, the applicant is usually the one that pays for the cost of putting the additional privacy measures required as a result of the design of the dwelling house.
I would abide by the decision and the consensus of the panel if the panel thinks that that's a fair thing to do, as long as the the objector does not put onerous requirements on the lattice, which from my experience, the objector has a lot of onerous requirements, like having it made out of like aluminium. If it's a timber lattice, absolutely, I'm happy to abide by the judgment of the panel, but I would ask that the panel be fair in terms of like imposing the types of lattice so that it's not too onerous.
Thank you. Is there anything further you wish to add at this point before I ask members?
No, I just like to thank you for taking the time out to see for yourself, because I think a picture paints 1,000 words.
Thank you. So, panel members, any questions?
Yes, I had one. When we inspected the house next door, in regard to the louvers that you referred to, the louvers are actually installed in a frame just like a casement window, and they can be opened so that the louvers aren't actually doing what you say. It just depends, I suppose, on the day and the mood of the person in the room, whether or not they do that or leave the casement that contains the louvers closed. So that's one thing we noticed next door.
In response to that, I've never seen the louver being open. I understand it's a permanent, at least to my understanding, I understand it's a permanent attachment, but
No,
also from
It's
from
not.
acute.
It's on a hinged frame, just like a casement window,
Okay.
and they
From
open
the
right up.
From the angle 2 levels up and at an acute angle, there's not much to see. I barely noticed the window.
All right.
Panel members, any further questions of Mr. Ong?
Just in respect of the glazing at the upper level on the northern side, the 2 long
Yes.
windows,
Yes.
the condition required obscure glazing, and there, we can see today that it's clear as opposed to obscure, and you're proposing instead louvers. What is wrong with the obscure glazing that was approved?
I've been in discussion with the planning officer who said that I've got a right to appeal. Those were temporary. I've got to go with one or the other. And my sort of the advice I've got is that, look, you could have many ways to skin a cat. The main purpose for those windows is to have the views straight across and not viewing into the private area of the neighbor. So I need to have windows there. It's a roll of the dice. If I want for glazed windows and I sort of get this condition approved, I would have to change the windows. So I need temporary windows there. I understand that it's up to the panel at the end of the day, but the advice I've been given is that, look, there are many types of privacy screen. The main focus or purpose of the privacy screen in that instance is to prevent me from looking at the private open space, which is pretty hard to see unless you're standing at the window. And with the proposal that I've sent, I've proven with using geometry that it's impossible to actually have a line of sight into the neighbor's property. Now, the planning officer has said that I've got the wrong scales on it. The mathematics of geometry does not change. It is a certainty, and I think that distracts from the point that it's just to prevent me from looking into the private open space.
Okay, can I just say perhaps an alternative may be obscure glazing up to a level, which would have to be obscure, not just film, obscure glazing up to 1.6 metres. So the upper portion of the window, see the sky.
I would object to that because I like the views. I could have the views without, compromising the privacy of the neighbor. If I can't see down into the open space, why do I need to block my views?
Right.
There's no benefit to the neighbor. I mean, that it's all in his mind. When you say that his privacy is invaded, there ought to be a standard, right? I have to be able to view into his private open space. If I could have the privacy sort of screen, which is opening flat of like 30 mm, without sort of being able to look at that, that's a common sort of privacy screen afforded by DCP. Why can't I have that? Why can't I have my views?
Okay, so and there's just one other question, and I didn't notice it when I was on site. I couldn't see the sign which had your private certifier's telephone number on it.
It's out there. The private certifier, the sign is on the gate. I could take a photo and send it to you. I mean, the few neighbors have actually complained to the private certifier. So, the sign's out there.
The sign is out the front with the telephone number of the private certifier.
I believe so. I'll check and confirm, but I know the northern neighbor has.
And you have advised council of who your private certifier is?
Absolutely. I think they've been in touch. The private certifier had to deal with complaints from the compliance officer several times over
Okay,
things
thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions at this point from panel members?
No.
If not, any questions of council staff at this stage? No. All right, thank you. So
Thank you very much.
we've now heard from all the registered speakers, and so I thank them all for their assistance today.
Apologies, panel. I just have one question. He mentioned a new northeast tree removal. This wasn't on the agenda. I think this was a new request. I just want to make sure it was, I need to make sure that this won't be considered because nobody was told about this one beforehand.
It's not a new request. It was on the original, it's on the DA.
Yeah, I think it was the original request. The staff assessment says the tree doesn't need to be removed, and the recommendation is its removal not be approved.
Okay, I just want to make sure because that's the big one we spoke about in the corner, and I'm concerned if it does die, then there will be huge impact on our privacy there because that's the one blocking all the bedrooms and the windows down the side passage.
Yes.
Well, the request is for the landscape development officer to make a call. If it's in any way weakened, I would sort of suggest the panel approves the removal because we have an instance of a fallen tree on very, very close to that similar size, and it caused a great deal of damage. Just imagine the lawsuit that will arise from this if it does collapse.
Yep, thank you, gentlemen. And we understand the points you're both making.
Thank you.
And our deliberations.
Thank you.
So in accordance with the guidelines, the public meeting will now be closed and we'll move to a closed meeting to deliberate and vote on these matters. The outcome from voting and determination being made available through the council's website, either late tonight or tomorrow. A recording of this meeting will also be available on the website. I also thank council staff for their assistance with today's meeting and the matters today. The time being 1:48, I now declare the public meeting closed. Thank you all for your attendance.